Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the SQL Bits session. Today we are going to talk about unified insights, staying ahead of performance issues, all within a single view of hybrid environment. So just quickly about me, I'm Naushad Shaik. I'm the senior consultant at Quest, where I predominantly support database monitoring products, infrastructure products, cloud, Azure, AWS, and Google Cloud aspects as well. So I have my contact details just in case you'd like to contact me and ask me any questions. So just to set the scene, I wanted to talk a little bit, give you an introduction why end-to-end Microsoft Azure performance monitoring helps using our product. What problems are we trying to solve? The visibility across Azure infrastructure and SQL database health, and how you can actually easily optimize database health by analyzing and also looking at intelligent query analysis that the product comes with. And also at the same time, it's very important for you to optimize Azure costs. So we'll also look at it, how you can actually look at those aspects and how you can actually take steps forward. So very quickly, what I'd like to do is I'd like to introduce you to Foglight. Foglight is a monitoring product. So there are two sides to it. If you see, there are two semicircles. On the left-hand side, we have something called Foglight Evolve. Foglight Evolve covers a lot of aspects on infrastructure monitoring, right from Azure, AWS, and VMware on-prem infrastructure. On the right-hand side, there is a full-fledged comprehensive database monitoring where we are looking at 11 different types of databases. SQL, Azure Managed Instance, Azure SQL DB, Oracle, MySQL, Cassandra, Amazon Redshift, and so on. So mainly, when you do have a monitoring tool, it is quite important to see what are the data analytics you get. So what does it have in addition to standard monitoring? It comes with capacity planning. It comes with change analysis. You're looking at automation and action remediations, diagnostics. How about controlling your costs, your budgets, things like that? So it's quite efficient in that way. If you're looking at service level agreements, I mean, we have large customers if you're in a banking industry or ministries, for example, in education. So if you have to maintain your service level agreements, it is very nicely modeled in that way where you can actually look at service dependencies, things like that. And also at the same time, if you have teams where you have DevOps or Dev operations or database operations teams, so you can actually integrate those particular teams and coordinate things like that. Reporting is another great feature to have within the product, and also you get health on databases and also on the infrastructure side. So let's take a quick glance what we have. This is just to give you an idea of the number of databases that we currently cover under one single product. It's a single pane view of databases where you can actually look at, in a quick glance, all the problematic databases, on-prem, cloud, database as a service, DBaaS systems, and instantly within 3 steps you can actually identify the problems, look at the alarms, look at navigate to the problematic areas. You can also look, this product itself comes with a specialized tool which is called Performance Investigator for databases. This contains an intelligent engine which is called IntelliProfile, which is doing capabilities like AI ML. So to give you insights on the system, you're looking at predictive and proactive metrics. It gathers and diagnoses data. It gives you baselines, historical views, identify and anticipate performance issues in order to investigate and rectify those problems as quickly as possible, and also optimize. So you can actually look at SQL plans, Azure plans, and also you can actually compare day-to-day values. Day-to-day values in the sense, if you have a particular SQL that you'd like to compare from previous day or a specific time, and also from instance perspectives. So there is quite a lot of analytics available behind the scenes, which this is quite useful in terms of for your performance investigation. So at this point, what I'll do is I'd like to take you through three main components. First, I'll cover the Azure SQL Database. Then I'll talk a little bit about Azure SQL on VM. And then we'll go into the depths of how do we actually look at Azure Cost, cloud control, things like that. So first of all, just to talk about what do we have in Azure SQL Database monitoring. Currently, with Azure SQL DB, we have monitoring available for single database and elastic database. So within the single database and elastic, you can get a complete picture of Azure monitoring, key highlights on database availability of your Azure, storage metrics, database data, query store. On the compute utilization, you have DTUs, utilization, log IO related information, instance performance right at the bottom there. You can actually look at activity levels, how many sessions were active or inactive, or sessions that are running in the background. So each of this style, what you could do is you could actually drill down further where you can look at specific key areas. Like, for example, if you have a Azure SQL DB, which is part of high availability or a geo replication partnership, so you can actually see what role those databases are playing. You can look at data utilization screens if you click and drill further. Instance performance, workload analysis, things like that can also be done. How about looking at sessions data? So sessions data is quite important, especially when you want to know what is actually happening on this database, how many sessions are being collected, what is active, what is inactive, and also look at background sessions by simply checking and unchecking the options there, which is highlighted in just above the table there. So you can actually see the complete spread of your sessions data. And then there is the component that I mentioned 2 slides before, which is SQL Performance Investigator. As soon as you have installed and configured the agent, you get this multi-dimensional historical data views for Azure SQL DB. So you can actually look at deep dive telemetry data from multi-dimensional perspectives for current and historical data, SQL statements, blocking history, T-SQL batches from programs perspectives. I mean, the reason we have all of these capabilities is, let's say, for example, for an instance, you have a situation where a user has accessed a ransom program and you wanted to identify where the problem lies. So simply diagnosing the data, you can actually go to these specific areas like users or client machines or particular object and identify the problems where the peak performance has hit the system. So I'm just going to. So this is the key areas that you'd like to get in there. So at this point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to step further into SQL database on Azure VMs. So this is quite common these days, where many of you may be migrating from on-prem to cloud as Azure. So if you started using Azure on a SQL Server on Azure VMs, there's comprehensive monitoring available for that as well. So you're looking at rich data since when the system is running, the operating system metrics. If you have any replication servers on the Azure cloud, we pick up the data there. Backup, database backup, missing backups, database utilization, log files. On the infrastructure perspective, it very cleverly shows you the difference between the CPU utilization from SQL Server perspective and also the machine's perspective, things like that. On operational data, you can look at logs, log job failures, and also deep dive metrics onto instance performance. So a lot of rich data coverage there. And then when you step into each of those blocks, each of those numbers, I've just put 3 screenshots there. There's lots more for you to diagnose and get inside each of those data metrics. So for example, I'm displaying on the screen, which is memory utilization. Get a preview of total memory versus SQL Server memory utilizations. And then you can actually look at instance performance, which actually shows you multiple metrics at the bottom. You can look at resource breakdown for each of those key areas. And what about looking at top SQL statement, where you can get a complete list of top SQL statements. You can look at execution plans. You can look at the and you can compare it with different time perspectives in order to understand where the problem was. As when you step further from these SQL statements and go into the execution plan analysis, you can do, it gives you three perspectives, first of all. The first perspective is the general plan details at multiple levels. You can look at operator analysis, whether the joins or the hash joins or the operators have been efficiently used in a SQL statement, and also object analysis, the type of objects that are used in a SQL statement. So things like that can also be looked at and measured. And then it also comes with a compare feature. The compare feature helps you with comparing if you had a SQL statement and there was a previous plan which was working better versus what it is now. You can do a very nice comparison between two plans. At the same time, if you'd like to generate a new plan, there is a nice icon on the top right corner which can be clicked and a new plan can be generated as well. So, well, if that's not enough, within the SQL Performance Investigator component, we are talking about proactive predictive metrics, and also at the same time, it is constantly analyzing the data to provide you advisories. There are about 19 different types of advisories in the system. So for each specific area where you can actually look at and investigate and see before a real problem has occurred. So this is basically, it's giving you some action steps that you can take. So for example, what I've done is, the screenshot now shows you excessive memory pressure. If you have database team members who can actually look at the action plan, what steps to be taken from the data metrics that Foglight has collected, and investigate, take suitable actions so that you to see where the workload has increased or the changes that have happened unexpectedly on the Azure SQL VM. And then, how about having multidimensional aspects? So here it becomes quite critical for you to deep dive into the analytical data. Again, very similar to the Azure SQL DB, we have the same level of but much richer data. SQL statements, T-SQL batches, programs, users, client machines, locked objects, objects I/O, blocking history. A lot of details on each of the key metrics. Like for example, the screen that you're seeing there, it is showing you databases and list of databases that were currently affected at that point of time. You can go historical. I mean, a classic example would be Monday morning you come to work and Saturday something has happened. You can slice and dice the data and investigate only that specific region and say, hey, I got a problem in this database. I have a SQL statement problem. How do I actually go into that statement and identify problems? Well, if that's not enough, let's have a look at advanced analytics. Advanced analytics is nothing but is a change tracking. So there are a few categories that Foglet collects. We have things like account level, database configuration, database object changes, execution plan changes, system configuration changes, master changes, and you can also add your own user-defined changes. So what is this giving you? So basically, your performance that happens on your system, at the same time you want to track. So the dots represent each of those categories, and you can identify, well, I didn't know somebody was making a change on the database. I didn't see there was object changes happening behind the scenes, or someone did make a configuration change without your knowledge on the Azure system, which caused an impact on the system. So these kind of changes are captured quite nicely so that you can keep track of your database changes and along with the performance that is happening there. So just before I move forward to the end-to-end Azure monitoring aspects, are there any questions you'd like to ask? Okay, so one of the key things where it's really important when you are running SQL Server on Azure is to have end-to-end Azure monitoring as well. So what do you gain by having end-to-end Microsoft performance monitoring? Well, today we see a lot of customers trying to move away from the standard on-prem systems or VMware systems and moving the SQL servers to Azure Cloud. So you may have one subscription, or you have multiple subscriptions, or you may have various different tenancies spread across across many regions. So how about monitoring those subscriptions, monitoring those tenants, where you can not only have performance monitoring for all of those systems available, you can have services spread across all Azure regions, collect and gather data for resource groups, collect data for network performance, cost details for each specific component. Well, let's take a look at the region-wise visualizations. So this particular screen is actually giving you visualizations across UK West. So we have machines spun up on with a lot of virtual machines there. You can actually look at the storage accounts and clicking that little icon on the number 4 where the box is pointed out, you can actually drill into the specifics of each machine. So I'm just going to take you further and where you can explore what it means to show to have the details of Azure VM. So you can actually drill into this Azure virtual machine, drill into those performance metrics at the top, look at the cost, how much billing has been spent for that specific machine. And then you can make a quality decision whether you need to optimize the system or take to the next step. Okay, so this is where I just popped up the screen there just for you to understand what it looks like from that perspective, where you can see current month's billing and also last month's billing there, and also the performance at the bottom around there. So, well, now once you have set your monitoring, once you have configured your subscriptions to gather the data into Foglight, well, behind the scenes, Foglight is very smartly monitoring and giving you how you can actually control your costs for each VM and also for your Azure SQL databases. So let's take a quick look at the breakdown. So there is a very nice aspect which is called the cost. So once you have configured, the dashboard comes up and there's a cost analysis where you can actually go into the Azure cost. If you are, if your company or if your organization is looking at multiple clouds, you can also have costs around for AWS or Google Cloud as well, just in case. So basically, for all the enabled tenants, you're looking at total spend versus forecasted costs, breakdown by service. I mean, if you look at this little circle there, I have highlighted a couple of costs there, especially in my subscription, in our company subscription. We spend a lot of money on virtual machines. We spend a lot of money on SQL databases, and storage as well. So these are the 3 components in my subscription, which is highlighted there. It's one of our team subscription, where we constantly work and we look at the top 5 resources. We look at the top 5 resource groups that are affecting our Azure Azure bills. And how about looking at Azure cost from virtual machine perspective? Well, you can actually look at details, the list of virtual machines where there is highest spend. You can further drill down into each resource group and look at the total cost for the resource group and the most affected resource in that particular resource group. So things like that can also be done. Now, how about controlling your costs, cloud costs by resource type? So there is another tab where we provide perspectives from each resource type. The highlighted ones there represents a virtual machine on the top. Then you have a SQL database and also a database as a service. For example, today you might be very focused on running SQL Server or SQL Azure. Azure gives you an option to use other databases as well. Like you have Postgres, you have MySQL, for example. And if you have applications that use other databases, you can still control your costs using the same application and have the capabilities around there. Now, let's take a look and drill further into each of these resource types. So let's, the first one is Azure SQL on virtual machine. So you can actually look at the costs and make relevant decisions on whether to reduce costs on a virtual machine perspective. How about looking at Azure SQL DB costs? And how about looking at DB costs, database as a service costs as well at the same time? So you pretty much, you can control your costs and you can actually look at the capabilities from performance insights as well. Now, in addition to all of these data metrics that you have from performance and cost, now we'll go one step further about optimizing and also resizing your Azure VMs? Well, there are some very good remediation action points that you could do. One is basically once you get in there, we show details around VM resizing, the machines that needs to be resized on Azure. You can look at potential zombie VMs and also unused resources. So you can very simply, what you could do is once Foglight understands the machines that are overused or you're spending a lot of money in those for those particular resources, what you could do is all you have to do is simply select those options there and use the option which is reclaim or reclaim now versus you can schedule it for another time period and resize those machines accordingly if you needed to, or you could also delete them if that's necessary. Similarly, you can look at the unused Azure VMs and unused resources and analyze, compare billings, compare and save on unused resources as well. So just to give you that. Now, before we go to the next step, are there any questions that has come across? Okay. Okay. So, well, we talked about having monitoring for SQL Server, SQL on Azure VMs. We talked about Azure SQL DBs. We talked about end-to-end monitoring. But alarms are very important. You need to have notifications on databases, infrastructure, SQL, Azure. So there is a comprehensive list of predictive, proactive, and baseline alarms within Foglight. So just a quick example to show you, we have alarms right now. You can look at historical alarms. You can look at alarms by service. You can look at alarms by type. The screen that you're seeing right now is alarms by type, which is basically showing a nice heat map display. You can select for a specific region. You can check those boxes, click OK, and see the alarms that are causing problems around that. And then you can also look at diagnosing further and investigate the process. And then there is another feature which is called alarm templates, where you can actually design your alarms to a specific template for your teams or a database type. And you can change the thresholds as you'd like to, because notifications are important for your team. Notifications can be used into other third-party products, if you have, like for example, you can send them to ServiceNow. There is an integration within the system, automatic integration that you could do. You can you can call the ServiceNow API and it creates tickets to the ticketing systems. Or if you have REST API components, like if there is a team which runs like database ops or IT ops, you can pretty much forward those alarms to third-party tools as well. Now, let's talk about having three components, like you have SQL, you have Azure, and you have end-to-end monitoring. But you have many other teams below your database team. For example, you have your DBA teams, your developers, your DevOps or infrastructure teams. What Foglight gives you is, because it's built on Java and uses Tomcat and Apache, the UIs can they're very user-friendly and they can be shared across multiple teams, where you can benefit from having not working in silos, but resolve problems together. It's one tool, a single platform where you can get the capabilities for all types of databases, as well as for a SQL Server, Azure, and end-to-end Azure monitoring. So we are almost towards the end of my presentation. Just a quick wrap-up, just to quickly highlight what we cover in terms of databases. So what it helps in terms of database teams, you can look at database capacity management, DevOps, CI/CD, reporting, cost and budget management. And then when you need to speak to your higher management, so what are the key things that benefit you of having Foglight is controlled hybrid risks. We're talking about dollar spend management, cloud spend, and sustaining the service and keep your services up and running without any performance impact. Then we can also talk about Foglight Evolve. Foglight Evolve is the infrastructure component where we talked about end-to-end Azure monitoring. So where you get complete visualization of the VMs. We have automated actions and remediations that you could take. You could look at VM compute utilization, the cost, the budgets, control, your spend, and at the same time, if you need to manage your hybrid as well as cloud on one platform, that can also be done. So at this point, what I'd like to do is I'll take some feedback and questions if you have. And that's the QR code if you'd like to send me feedback. And finally, what we have is, I'm not sure if you have come across Foglight Virtual Lab. It's available free. You can register on Foglight Virtual Lab, which will give you an option to experience our lab, where you can get the benefit of all the databases, infrastructure components which are pre-configured, get the opportunity, and it's a simple link. I'm going to share the screen as well, so you can take the QR code. All you have to do is register here. You'll get your user credentials sent to you within the next 5 to 10 minutes. Once you're registered, key in your details, and you'll have a full-fledged monitoring available to use the lab efficiently. So thank you.